Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Alex White here at Peak Human Performance, and today we're going to talk about 3 different exercises you can use as a substitution away from doing the back squat. Sometimes, I know, we want to work out, we want to go hard, we want to go heavy, but if we can't squat and something's bothering us, whether it's our shoulders, our core, our trunk, our hips, or our knees, sometimes we need to be able to take a break away from back squatting. So I'm going to give you 3 exercises today that we're going to be able to use that will not only improve our squat performance if we decide to go back to the bar, but they're also going to be great ways to segue into doing something else that are going to be more designed for longevity. All right, so the first exercise we're going to focus on today is going to be a step back reverse lunge. So what I want to do to get myself situated first is I want to plant my strongest leg, whichever leg is going to be the lead leg, first down on the ground. Once I've got that aligned, I want to make sure that that leg is stacked somewhere over the middle of my foot. I don't necessarily in this exercise need it to go too far forward, and I definitely don't want it to go too far back. So as I'm set up, whether I'm loading this or I'm unloaded and I'm just using my body weight, I want to be able to take that full step all the way back, drop down to the floor, get a light tap of the back knee to the ground, and then drive through the front leg all the way back up to the top. So as much as I can, I want to keep that loading through the front leg. If I can do that really well, I'm going to be able to not only activate my quads, but I'm also going to be able to activate my glutes, my hamstrings, and my adductors as well. So now that we got an idea of the movement that we're going to do, let me just show you what it looks like to load that up. We might go ahead and grab 2 dumbbells and hold them in a low hold position. We could alternate, do a high-low, or we could do a double high position, your choice. Today, I'm just gonna drop one down. So my first few reps, I'm just gonna show you what it looks like from the very front. Ground that front leg down, good spacing between my big toe, my pinky toe, and my heel. Make sure I have 3 points of contact to the ground. And then I wanna step back, keep my chest and torso up nice and high, good tap to the ground, step all the way back to the top. We'll knock out 3, 4 reps here, just so you can see what it looks like in real time. Last one, and back to the top. So as you're taking a look from the side, same thing, keeping that balance, straight step back. Notice the relationship between the knee and the midfoot position, and back to the top. So a couple things I want you to be mindful of as you're going through this step back reverse lunge. The first one is going to be about your foot. Okay, as you step down and you get down to this position, we want to make sure that we're evenly distributing the weight between the big toe, the pinky, and the heel. At Peak, we call this the tripod foot because we want to make sure that all 3 points of that tripod are down in the ground when we're doing a strength-based exercise. The next thing that we want to pay attention to is the relationship between the knee and the middle of the foot. I definitely don't want my knees to be too far forward over my toes here, and I definitely don't want them to be way too far out to the side here. So what I'm really looking for is if I can get that kneecap to be in alignment with my middle toe, I'm in a good spot. So the last thing I want to think about when I'm in this position is where are my hips and how are my hips? Because if I'm tight in my hip flexor and my hips are tilting forward, that's going to create a little arch in my lower back. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that we can tuck our hips down and back so that every time I drive to stand up, I'm actually doing a great job of engaging my glute. So if you can't feel your glute in this exercise, one of the quick tricks is to make sure that you're putting pressure down through your heel. If you can drive through your heel and your body is in the right position, chest up, hips forward, then you're gonna be able to feel that glute really fire off, and it's gonna make sure that you're getting the exact activation that you're looking for in the exercise. All right, so the second exercise we're gonna talk about is called a lateral squat. And this is just a basic squat. However, instead of going front to back, we're actually gonna move in the frontal plane, and we're gonna drop all the way out to the side. So one of the big mistakes that I see a lot of people make when they do this exercise or when they're posting it online is that they're typically starting with a really narrow stance, and when they're going out to the outside, they're pushing that hip way further out than they need to, which is creating a lot of instability or unnecessary pressure on the knee. So one of the most important things that you can do first is open up nice and wide. Second thing is give those toes just a little bit of an external rotation right through the hips. And then the same rules apply as when we're doing that backwards lunge or the reverse lunge. As I sit down through the hips, I want to focus on this opposite hip, and I want to aim down at the arch of the foot, this on the side of the direction that I'm going. So when I sit down, I'm aiming down to the inside of that arch right here, and I, again, want to make sure that my knee is in alignment with those middle toes, And then when I push back up, I want to drive through the big toe in the heel so that I can activate those inner thigh muscles. It's going to give me some stability on my knee. So I'll knock out 5 reps for you here. Sit down nice and low. Keep the chest and torso upright. Make sure that my heel stays down on the back side. Good. Pressing all the way through, right back to the top. Awesome. So when we're talking about loading the exercise, there's a variety of ways that you could load this. Same thing, we could go back to dumbbells. We could hold 1 dumbbell on the outside, 1 dumbbell on the inside, and make sure that we're lined up and go through a lateral squat here. The other way that we could work on doing this exercise is we could hold a kettlebell in a goblet hold or a high hold position right here underneath the chin. Now, whether you hold it here by the handles, turn it up to the thumbs, it's irrelevant, your choice. But we're gonna do everything the exact same. We open up those feet nice and wide, we make sure that the belly's in alignment, shoulders back, chest up, got a good grip through the kettlebell. Take a deep breath in, brace, sit down, exhale, drive back to the top. Down, back to the top, down, back to the top. So a few of the common mistakes that I see in this exercise, I've already alluded to. A lot of it is gonna stem from how wide your feet are. So usually, clients don't take their feet wide enough, or they take their feet way too wide. And then when they try to squat, it looks like this. So what you're looking for is I want you to imagine that there's a wall that runs up the outside from my foot all the way up, vertical wall. And as I sit myself down, as I'm using that hip pointer, right, to the diagonal foot or the arch of that foot, I also want to try and take my hip out to that wall. And as I'm driving my hip out to that imaginary wall, I don't want to let my knee go out, and I don't want to make it go in. I want to have a straight line that runs through this hip, through this knee, down into that toe. And as I sit down, I'm trying to take my hip out so that it becomes flush with that imaginary wall. Then I drive all the way back up through the floor. Down, back up. The second thing that I usually see clients do that is incorrect here is that as they start their descent, their lack of ankle dorsiflexion is actually limiting their ability to get their knees to go forward and creating space for their hips. Also, they could just be really tight in their hip flexors from sitting in an office chair or a classroom all day. So one of the things that we want to do here is we really want to focus on keeping those heels down. So instead of dropping down into that squat, and as you start to drop down, you lift the heels up, what I would suggest is using something like a simple platform. Maybe you take a 5 or a 10-pound plate. Maybe if you've got some risers like this one here that can help. But what you want to do is just elevate that heel so it's up nice and high. And with that few extra inches, it's going to change the way that the structures in the joints are able to work and load with each other. So now that makes it way easier for you to still drive through your glute, get that activation through the posterior chain so that you're not front dominant. Sit down nice and low, drive all the way back up out of the hole. So the last thing that I see clients often having difficulty with in this movement is in relationship to their anterior posterior pelvic tilt and how that's going to impact their lower back. So usually when clients set up, if they're tight in their hip flexors or they're limited in their ankles, what they'll often do is they'll hit this imaginary brick wall, and then in their mind, they think they're still going down, but really all they're doing is just bowing forward. And that's what we want to eliminate, right? We don't want to sit here and do this every single time, when really the work is down here and dropping those hips down nice and low. So one of the things that you want to make sure that you can check on is what your hip flexibility looks like and what your adductor flexibility looks like. So there's 2 key stretches that you would do here. First one, couch stretch or a half kneeling stretch, where we're right here, we tuck those hips and press forward. Second stretch, here, just to the outside, split the difference between my knee and my foot, and then I sit back into this stretch, feeling that go through my adductors. Once I've got some range here and I've got plenty of space to move, I can bring it back up to the top. And then I just want to focus on my hips. As long as I can keep my chest and torso upright, I'm putting the load where it is supposed to go. And as long as I follow the quality of that movement, the depth will come with time. So I would rather see me hit those reps right here, where my chest and torso stays upright, and my legs, my hips, my knees act like the elevator, rather than dumping forward and thinking that that is where I'm getting the most bang for my buck. All right, so the third and final exercise we're going to work on today is just a real simple step up. And we could do this step up here in the sagittal plane, But what I want to show you today is just a combination of the two movements that we made before. See, we've already done this step back reverse lunge. We've also done that lateral squat. So now what we're going to focus on is a lateral step up. So as I get myself set up here, I want to make sure that my weight is distributed evenly. And what I mean by that is right now in standing, all of my weight is on my right leg. So I could literally just pick my left leg up off the box here. But in order for this to be effective, I have to create a little bit of neural activity. So in order for that to happen, I want to take this right foot out to the side a little bit, and then I want to shift my weight over to the left and slightly forward. And by doing that, now I've got all of these muscles fired up. And this is taking me back to the bottom part of my step back reverse lunge here. As I'm really focused on that, now from here, I can brace into my belly. Everything is nice and tight. I drive through my left leg all the way up to the top, stride here. As I come down to the floor, I want to maintain that control. I want to try to not push off of my bottom foot. Keep the core nice and tight. Exhale, drive all the way up to the top. Get that stride all the way up at the very top. Right back down. So as an exercise with a step up, one of the greatest things that you could do is, again, load it from the top. One arm, high hold. You could even go all the way up overhead. How you load it is totally up to you. But that you are doing it with good form is what is most important in the very beginning. So start with body weight. And you really want to challenge yourself, focus on lowering yourself down with the most amount of control. This type of exercise is called eccentric loading. We want to pump the brakes as we come down because that way of the muscle firing is actually going to help you build up the greatest amount of strength overall. Eccentric. So 3 of the most common mistakes that I see in this exercise, the very first one is an aggressive push off of the bottom foot. So usually, depending on how high this step is, it may feel uncomfortable and you may not be able to actually drive through the way that you need to. So to compensate, what most people will do is they'll push off of that bottom leg, which really takes away from this leg's ability to generate that power and force, right? So we want to stay off of this. So the way that you fix that is by driving that heel down into the floor, lifting the toes up, and then really concentrate on loading into that left leg. That way when you go to take off, up, 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 the drive comes, down, 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 all through this top leg. The second thing that I usually see is that people are picking steps that are way too high for their capability. So if you are in position and you got to pick this foot up and you have to round your back or it's throwing your hips out of position, then you should probably lower this step down. A step that is below your knee is usually appropriate for a beginner. If you're really beginning, starting somewhere at that mid-shin is probably a safe spot. You really want to try to stay in that 12 to 18 inches range because that's where you're going to be able to get the joint kinematics, the activation from the muscles, fully aligned and fully engaged for the desirable end result that we're looking for, which is actually building strength in that single leg. So if you notice in this step for me is 18 inches. It's just under my kneecap. And for me, front thigh parallel to the floor, this is a good position to be in. Anything from here, if I go with heavier loads, I would probably bring that step down just a little bit lower so that I could drive all the way through. So the last thing that I often see with clients in this exercise is rocking into the step, which is going to come back to where we are in terms of our hips, how we are with our heels, and what we're loading through the legs. So the most important thing here is that we're not leaning forward, pushing the belly into the thighs, dumping the lower back. What we want to do is we want to make sure that we get a slight posterior pelvic tilt, and if you notice as I'm cranking back, I'm actually bringing my torso into position. This is going to allow me to engage the core muscles that I have here to create stability for my lumbar spine so that the muscles in my hips are able to do what they are supposed to do. So if I'm staying in this position here, I'm actually putting all that pressure down into my legs to help me drive all the way up and through. If I start tilting my hips and arching and bowing forward, now I feel my erectors kick on and I'm cranking on my back muscles unnecessarily. So if you can fix that, that's going to be amazing because it's going to allow you again to put all of the pressure in the joints where it's supposed to go into the right muscle groups. All right, guys, so that wraps up everything that we wanted to cover today in those 3 exercises. I want to make sure that you got some time to go through each one of these so that you can fully understand the do's and the don'ts of each exercise, how to load it appropriately, and what its main purpose is. So again, if you are taking some time away from the back squat, These are gonna be 3 amazing exercises that are gonna help you out. Between the step back reverse lunge, the lateral squat, and the lateral box step up, you've got 3 options to really diversify your functional training program. I'm so glad you guys were able to join me here. If you ever have any questions or you're interested in coming and training with us at Peak, reach out to us, peakhumanperformance.us. I'm Coach Alex. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you guys in the gym.